the thing is that I think we all agree with each other when we are looking at channels like this, that it is very hard to understand if there is a purpose to life. We might personally feel like that. We might feel like we have a destiny, or that there is something that we can do to improve the situation in life. And as a result, we do all kind of things. And for me, recently, I was a little bit surprised about the fact that I got myself a little bit caught off guard by reading particular kind of materials. And I was like, oh, but that's a forgotten corner of my research and the purpose behind my research. So let's elaborate on this in this video, and we're going to talk about determinism and non-determinism in Chinese medicine, in Taoism, and also in the modern world, in New Age, and in other kind of millenarian movements that are currently roaming the planet and trying to ruin it. So what is the reason why the things that are happening in the world are actually happening? Is there a purpose behind it? What is the reason why these things happen? Is there a purpose behind it, or are there people steering society into that particular kind of direction? And you can see in society as a whole that there are people who think about it like this or like that, and these discourses, they go a little bit through each other, and they are obviously not always properly thought through, because very many people, they talk about things like disinformation, they talk about false information, they talk about oversaturation of information through social media, the internet, TV, movies, and so forth and so forth. But nonetheless, there are all kind of issues in life that we either can or cannot address, or we can address them but cannot solve them. So what can we do to avoid these problems? And is it actually possible to avoid these problems? This is actually the core question about this. As we see in the current world frame with the war in the Arab world and in Ukraine and in the Sudan and all kind of other places where there are currently military conflicts, civil wars, the way how people have lost faith in their elections and put their trust in dictators who enrich themselves at the expense of the people, so that life does not become any better at all, as you've seen in Russia, in many other dictatorships, as is currently happening also in the United States in a very high speed. Did you already know that there was a test of the current political situation in the United States, and it's not recognized anymore as a democracy? This is already how far it got. So to pull back from that brink is already going to be very difficult. The consequences for people, the need for people to just obey whatever is being ordered to you, also as a result that becomes bigger and bigger, and this gives a feeling of determinism in society as a whole. There is things unavoidable, you can't say no, and if you do say no, that could cost you your life. And that sounds to me very medieval and very 19th century and very beginning 20th century, when people started all kind of wars, which in the end only ended up in impovering people and killing a lot of people, and misunderstandings of different kind of cultures, which of course is at the core of a lot of things happening at this moment in the world. So let's discuss this for a moment from the perspective of my clients, or clients in general. Say clients comes in, right? What is their outlook on life? This is one of the main things you need to ask for any clients. What perspective do you take? Because if you don't know what kind of perspective this client has, you do not understand yet what is going to be the outcome of the therapy. Are they expecting, like if people are being trained by regular medicine, that the doctor can basically resolve things good enough that you can go back to work, or you can go back to doing your shoppings or whatever, but cannot really resolve any issues? Or are you believing that you can be healed, and what does that healing then entail? All these kind of things are very important, because in the clinical work that you are doing, the results that you can achieve are very often dependent on the worldview and the perspective on life that the client has, but also at the same time it might be possible that there's an opening to change the worldview of that person, and that is not the easiest task at all. At the moment when I give classes, usually the people who stay in my classes, they share sort of a worldview or perspective on life about the changeability of their future. And at the same time, they struggle sometimes also with the idea that some issues are unavoidable, like aging in a bad way, or growing overweight, or always eating too much, or having emotional issues, or, there's a lot of different kind of things that are difficult to overcome. And I look at my own life, I see the things that I have overcome, and the difficulties that I come across over time as a result of that. So I can only see myself mirrored in the kind of clients that I get to see and that I get to talk about with my colleagues, either teachers or therapists. And I see that all of them, when you question them a bit about it, are struggling with the same thing. They don't really understand what is the perspective that the client has for their improvement. So we're going to talk about that in this video, and we're going to discuss the issues that are at work here. If you start with the perspective that the outlook of the person on life is going to determine the outcome of therapeutic work, then at that moment you have to realize that whether you give somebody Tai Chi Chuan, or whether you give somebody Qigong, or you give somebody acupuncture, or you massage, or you do tantric work, or whatever kind of things you do, in all these different kind of cases, you are going to have a particular kind of result which is limited by the worldview that they have. There are particular kind of things that people will not do. There's particular kind of lines that people will not cross for their healing. And of course, moral boundaries and so on, these are all very important. But if it is about healing, making sure that you get better and that you can be free from the problems that you have, seems at first sight obvious. But if your worldview is in outlook deterministic, that means that you do believe that things are meant to be, then at that moment there is much less freedom than when you believe in the makeability of reality. So let's question this a bit, because this is actually one of the things that my research also is working at. And in that sense, it is important to also realize in my approach of you and your approach of my program, my research program, on what you can expect and what I can expect from you. And that is going to be an important alteration in my research in general, that I will also have to change in my synopsis. Let me thank you for watching this video. I am very happy with your views, and without you, making these videos would not be as interesting, because of course it is nice to share important information with people when it is about nature, whether it's about Chinese medicine, whether it's about Tai Chi, Kung Fu, Taoism, Buddhism, Confucianism, all these kind of things that are all coming together in this Wudang culture that I represent in my work and in my research and in my clinic. There are a lot of people of you, though, that come across me by accident, or maybe look at my videos on a regular basis, but you're not part of my channel yet. And it would mean a lot to me if you would just subscribe to the channel and make sure you also ring the bell so that the algorithm can show you more of my videos or material like mine, because it's not just about me, but it's also about people like me. And there are not so many of us, so this is pretty much of a niche kind of situation that I'm at, and I'm trying to find more members for the simple reason that I want to do my research and I want to share this important information, because healthcare needs to be reorganized, and the ideas of Taoism, Zhang Zhongfen specifically, and also other thinkers like Sun Simiao, they are very important for the future of healthcare, and also they can be of major importance to your survival after something really bad happens to the world. And especially in this moment of time, you can see that there are a lot of problems happening which are out of our control. So it means that learning skills that are relevant is very important. And I know of no channel so far, and if I'm wrong, please correct me, of a channel that is showing you information specifically about how to use Chinese medicine as a survival tool. It's not that I'm a survivalist, because really I am not a survivalist. I hope this world is going to continue as it is, maybe improve, hopefully improve, because that is what I've always desired over time. But there are things that we can learn to make our life easier now through Chinese medicine and Kung Fu, and also for the future in case anything bad happens. So let's help each other and come into the channel. If you feel like follow our courses, that will be really very good. If you want to just partake as a object for being researched in my research program, that would also be really great. I will put you on the list. If you are signing up early, you get a firm discount if you pay at once. So that means that I can start my research earlier when I reach a particular kind of sign-up target. That makes it possible for me to finance the expenses of doing the research, because research is unfortunately not for free, and I am only working for prices that people can afford. So that means I'm not going to be rich from my clinical work. So welcome. If you have already watched my videos in the past, you do probably know that I did do a minor at the University of Amsterdam in the past, which I didn't finish. I have to admit that also, because of disagreements with some of the approaches in the minor, and probably also my own stubbornness and stupidity. But I had a minor in the history of Western esoterics as part of religious studies. I didn't want to become a priest or anything like that, but I thought being part of modern esoteric culture in the Netherlands, that is a very interesting topic. And the teacher, Wouter Hanegraaf, Professor Wouter Hanegraaf, he was amazing. He was very inspiring. And in his first semester, actually, I learned a lot that I still are using in my current program. And the second module was more specialized into particular kind of directions, as it goes in the minors, and there was much less specificity that I could use in my further work at this point. Maybe in a later time that will come, but at this point, for what I'm doing right now, the first one was an eye-opener, because it gave an overview of the historical development from the Middle Ages till now, and especially the development from the Theosophic Society until now was an eye-opener. And in that sense, also, I have to say that there are particular kind of things that were not discussed in the module, and we're going to talk about a little bit also in here, where that module was actually short on. Let's discuss a little bit about Chinese medicine. Chinese medicine, as you see, I have this perspective that there is the TCM, the Chinese medicine, the Zhongyi, as it is being practiced in China. There is the Chinese medicine, or TCM, as it is being practiced in the West by people from an esoteric background or from more medical background, and there's the medical acupuncture, medical approach towards these kind of things, and there's a lack of understanding of the health philosophy behind Chinese medicine. So people are in general following particular kind of worldviews, and as a result of that, they lack certain other kind of things. And as you might know, that in the trainings that I give, I think yangsheng is the first thing that people should learn. Not that people should get stuck with it, but in the first 2 years they learn the outlook, the scientific outlook, and the traditional Taoist, Buddhist, Confucian outlook, I Ching, science, and so forth, to have a good understanding about where Chinese medicine actually philosophically and wants to go to. And then already you have a wide range of schools and ideas that are very different from each other. Huatou and Sun Simiao, they do not agree with each other. Dao Hongjing also does not agree with that. And there's later thinkers that are building on the previous ones, which are also not agreeing with each other. There is the I Ching and the Dao. The Jing, for instance, very important for Chinese medicine studies. And if you look at the text of the Tao Te Ching and you look at the commentaries by Wang Pi, who was a Confucian scholar, although usually admirable, they do not agree with each other necessarily, and they bring their own swing in there. So there you can see that the different kind of worldviews, they also influence the way how you look at things. And the whole point of the Chinese learning system is that you are starting from a particular kind of basic point and then learn to elaborate on that and gradually build your worldview on that. And from there, your success as a therapist or a teacher or philosopher or scientist or analyst or coach or whatever kind of things you're going to do. But what is the problem, and that is also what I addressed in my discussions at the Dongfang Daxue and at the Chaoyang Daxue and other places in China, when I was working with them and when I was at commissions from the Chinese body of top scholars, where I was just a listener and sometimes was invited to talk about or to answer particular kind of questions about Western views on these things. One of the things that you see is that there is not much understanding from the present about the past, and there's not much understanding about rules and regulations within different cultures and countries in general. And the average Western practitioner of TCM does not really understand anything about all these kind of things that are taking place within China, which of course has much more history, as you can understand. Our TCM perspective, not mine anymore in the meantime, but our TCM perspective is based on a basic set of formulas in our thinking and has a very mechanistic worldview, a materialistic worldview. And it basically says like, okay, somebody comes into my clinic, I give them treatment, and either they get better or they don't get better. And I can maybe change my formula. I do so many repeats or whatever kind of approach. I use these needles or these needles. So there are all kind of tricks that people play to try to get to a result. And in research in Chinese medicine, you see that the perspective of the client is always missing. The expectations are being questioned sometimes, like, what do you expect? And then they usually come with something like, oh, I expect a good result, or I don't know if they can heal this, or they can repair this. But the deeper motivations in the way of thinking of the client or the student is usually not questions. And I have not seen, I've done my research for this video to see if anybody else talked about it so that I could borrow from them, but nobody else talked about it. So this is the first time you will hear about this topic. And if you think it's important, just share it with other people if they might be interested in that too. But what is important is that in the West, you have this different kind of new traditions, you can say, and then the New Age tradition specifically is becoming more and more dominant over time within Chinese medicine. So people talk about things like energy, which is a typical New Age concept, and they talk about healing, and it's a typical New Age concept. All these kind of things, they came up with the development of New Age thinking in the 1970s, especially after the famous song about the age of Aquarius from, what's it called? When you look at these things, it is important to understand what New Age thinking actually is. And I think most people, especially people who practice Chinese medicine, they are not aware of the downsides of New Age thinking and the upsides of New Age thinking. So in this video, we are going to go a little bit deeper on that. And we're now going to go to the third chapter for this topic, especially because of people like Deepak Chopra, who was part of the Epstein files and has become highly suspect with all this thinking because he was preaching one particular kind of New Age philosophy, but he was locked into a very 19th century moral philosophy of abuse of women and children. So he is not the only one, of course. This is important to realize. Because of the length of the video, you might think maybe this is the end of the video, but it isn't. It is just a stop for this part. This is the free and the open part. The actual discussion is going to be discussed in a longer video, which I will have to make after this one is finished. There is still a lot of things to talk, and one of the things I'm going to talk about is several texts and books that are relevant for the understanding of this topic. And these are some historical things, but there are also some parts of new research that I come across by accident on the London Book Fair. So join me for the second part of the video.